hello and welcome to Common Sense Ethics. My name is Leah. My guest today is Jonas Salzgeber. He is coming back to the channel after what? How long has it been? Almost, I think,
4 years.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he is returning to the channel. And Jonas, do you want to introduce yourself quickly and tell us a little about yourself and your book and or anything else you want us to know?
Yes, so thanks for having me, Leah. I'm happy to talk to you again after 4 years. Yeah, time is passing by quite quickly. So, I'm a human being. That's most I can say about myself. When it comes to Stoic philosophy, that's what people are
Right.
interested in. So I wrote the Little Book of Stoicism.
Right.
And yeah, apart from that, I like doing all kinds of sports and meeting friends and, be out in nature. And, I have a new dream. I want to, live in nature and maybe someday build my own house or maybe, or, just do something with my hands and work out in nature.
That sounds nice. I think we all want that in some sense. Yeah, I wish we had like a cabin or something. My husband and I would like to have something like that. But yeah, anyway, what we're going to be discussing today is sort of some of the gloomier aspects of what it is to be human. Although I don't really think that. I'm just saying that. But really, we're going to talk about have a Stoic dialogue on sort of illness, injury, mortality, coming to terms with that, sort of a Stoic perspective on the emotion of fear. And also what happens when sort of fear overcomes reason. So some people might say the gloomier aspects of life or whatever, but really, if you want to be philosophical about it, it's more matters of ultimate importance, right? Because these are aspects of life that we really can't avoid dealing with, and that makes them really fundamentally important. So speaking of illness or an injury, you had a serious injury recently. Would you like to tell us a little bit about it and how sort of Stoic philosophy helped you cope?
Yeah, sure. So last September, I was playing football, European football. So I think you call it soccer.
Yeah.
With a lot of friends. So it was friends who organized a tournament, and so I kind of knew everybody there, around 50 people. So it was the third or fourth game that I luxated my knee. It was just normal, I was running with the ball, and it sort of just happened that I could hear my knee, doing some noises, and then I was lying on the floor, and my lower leg was looking in the wrong direction. So I was shocked at first, so I was screaming the F word. Even in Switzerland, we use this word. So I was screaming because I was shocked. It's not nice to see a knee, looking in the wrong direction, even if it's not your own knee. But that moment, it was my own knee, and yeah, it feels awkward. It's not pain. It's more, I would say, some realization that I need help. It's something's not right. I can see it, and also I felt it. When it happened. So it turns out that I both cruciate ligaments were ruptured, and the inband of the knee was ruptured, and the outer meniscus was torn in half, and so my friends, they called an ambulance because when they saw it, they were like, "Oh yes, you need help."
Yeah.
And so the ambulance came and they took me to hospital, and it was, the first moment was big shock, and I guess still parts of me were still shocked, but after a while I was there, and I could already accept it that my knee is looking in the wrong direction. The pain wasn't too bad, and there were people around me. And as soon as, the people, from the hospital were there, or the ambulance, I knew I'm in good hands, and they already gave me some medicine, some painkillers, and they put me on this stretcher, so to carry me in the ambulance. And my friends were all, I guess they didn't know what to do, so they were clapping, just like, oh yeah, come on, you're gonna be okay. So, and I remember this woman. She asked me several times,
Yeah.
on a scale 1 to 10 about my pain. I was like, yeah, pain is fine. Yeah, I just,
Yeah.
it's a weird feeling.
Yeah.
And in hospital, I was glad when I was in hospital. All the people came looking at the knee, and they were actually, many of them, they have never seen this before, even working in hospital. So was
Really?
yes, because
Oh, wow.
it's not so common to have the knee luxated, especially not playing soccer. Happens with
Yeah.
more with American football and rugby
Yeah.
or stuff. That's more, on the knee. So I think Stoicism actually helped me a lot, and maybe I did not think, Stoicism helps me right now, or what can I do that helps me.
Right.
I had somehow this Stoic ideas integrated into my
Right.
being. It's like second nature that I have. I cannot really be very angry about the situation, or frustrated. I can get frustrated, but I know it's just a situation, and I'm aware that I don't know whether it's going to be good or bad. These
Yeah.
judgments of the situation. So if you have this injury, the judgment is going to be, this is terrible, and it looks terrible and not nice, and there are certainly nicer situations to be in or to find yourself in, but maybe it's
Yeah.
going to be okay, or maybe there's a reason that I have this injury right now. And so what helped me most was the
Yeah.
acceptance of the injury, I would say. And I've learned this, mostly from Stoic philosophy, to accept the situation and, try to make the best given
Yeah.
the circumstances. So I really, I really tried to enjoy the experience of having this injury and being in hospital for almost 2 weeks and having a surgery. I've never really had a surgery before, so I found, ways to enjoy this experience, because everything is new, and if you can somehow distance
Yeah.
yourself from your body, if you know, I, I- I'm happy to have this body. I can move and everything, but somehow, if you have pain, for example, I learned that
Yeah.
the pain is one thing, but you don't need to suffer, and it's the same with the knee, with the injury. Suffering
Yeah.
is your choice. So I would say acceptance when it comes to Stoic philosophy, acceptance of the situation.
Yeah.
And what comes to mind is the maybe story. Uh, you've probably heard it before. It's not. I would say it's classic Stoic philosophy, but I've not
Yeah.
read it in the book about Stoic philosophy. The story of the Chinese farmer. Maybe I've told you already a couple
I
of
think so. But just say it for the listeners. So.
So I'll try to keep it short. So once upon a time, there was a Chinese farmer, and he lost the horse. It ran away. So the neighbors came to the farm and said, "Oh, that's terrible, isn't it?" And he
Oh,
said,
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
"Maybe."
Yeah.
The next day, his horse came back and brought 7 wild horses with it.
Oh, yeah. 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 Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
neighbors came again to the farm and said, "Oh, that's wonderful, isn't it?" And the farmer said, "Maybe." The next day, the farmer's son tried to tame one of the wild horses, and he fell off the horse and broke a leg. And so all the neighbors came to the farm and said, "Oh, that's terrible, isn't it?" And he said, "Maybe." The next day,
Yeah.
uh, you know, people from the Chinese army came, recruiting young men for the Chinese army, and they did not want to have the farmer's son in their army because he had a broken leg. So he did not need to go to the military. to the army, and the neighbors came all to the farmer and said, "Oh, that's wonderful," and he said, "Maybe." And this story, it's been with me for many years, and it reminds me, you don't know, the future, so you don't know whether it's good or
Right.
bad. If you have even such a nasty injury.
Right. Yeah, no, that I didn't think of that parable as being stoic, but I guess it is. Yeah, no, I like that. And yeah, and it's good that you're to the point where you feel like you've sort of internalized the Stoic philosophy to the point that where it's tested, that you didn't really have to consciously force yourself to apply it. I don't know that I don't really feel like I'm to that point. Like a little later, like when I got COVID and stuff, like a couple years ago, like I didn't at first, maybe I felt that way, but then I just felt at the testing point that I wasn't quite there. You know what I mean? But we can
Mhm.
talk about that part later. But yeah, speaking of which, so I mean, let's talk about like fear, and what first off, like what the Stoic perspective is on this emotion, and how it can help us, to maintain that Stoic perspective on fear.
So with fear, I would say we need to differentiate between acute fear, when
Right.
something's happening right now. So for example,
Right.
I'm at home, watching TV or whatever, and someone's entering my home, a burglar or
Right.
anyone, and then I'm afraid because of this situation right now. So this is acute, and luckily here it does not happen frequently or at all. And
Right.
there's a fear that we have, about the future, and this is might be more chronic. And generally,
Yeah.
chronic
Yeah.
is worse, than acute, even if the acute situation is annoying. But if you have
Right.
chronic fear, it accompanies us for a long time, and we
Right.
it doesn't help. So I don't know, the Stoics in a situation where it's acute, where you're
Right.
afraid of the burglar, for example, who maybe has a knife or something. So I think there we just react because this is
Right.
something that almost never happens to us. So
Right.
I guess I'm no expert on fear, but I think some
Yeah.
will hide, some will fight, some will freeze. These are like
Right.
the most common responses, I think. And you could probably prepare. You could, if this happens frequently, you will know how to respond
Right.
in the situation. You do a stoic response. You can practice it, but as it does not happen so frequently, I
Right.
think you will respond in your individual way.
Right.
Maybe you're someone who fights, and maybe you're someone who freezes or runs away.
Right.
I don't know. But with if we're looking into the future and if we're afraid of something that's not here yet, I think
Right.
we want to talk about that. So with the Stoics, I would say there's this famous quote from Seneca that we suffer more often from imagination than
Right.
reality. So I would say the Stoics, they try to, you know, I it's how I imagine, it, so if you have a person who's afraid, a Stoic teacher would ask you to look at the situation neutrally. So look at the facts.
Right.
What's here right now, and what are you afraid of? And so if you're afraid of something that might happen or not happen, so you look at the situation, at the facts, and
Yeah.
then you would ask what's under my control and what's not under my control.
Right.
Yeah, and then the Stoic would apply a reason, but I think we are individuals, and to some Stoicism resonates, and to others it does not. So I would say you need to So
Right.
from person to person and have maybe a different approach. But generally the Stoics,
Right.
as I understand them, they would, find this some distance and look at the facts.
Right.
And they
Right.
do
Yeah.
not want to, suffer more than necessary. And probably it's not necessary to suffer at all. But if you have a
Yeah.
future event, let's say you go to a job interview, next week, or yes. So some people might be, a bit stressed out. Some might be
Yeah.
afraid of not getting the job
Yeah.
because they will have no money to pay the bills. So they have this. So the future is insecure, and this makes them, stress out
Right.
and maybe afraid of some
Right.
possibilities in the future. So um, they would say it's
Right.
not necessary, and you prepare. And so I would. There are many things, that are stoic in that sense. That you look at the situation itself. So right now, I'm at home, sitting here talking to you, or I'm at home doing something and preparing for the job interview, and I'm already afraid.
Yeah.
But right now, the job interview is not here yet. So
Right.
I want to focus on the things I control, and that's not whether I get the job or not. It's I can prepare for the interview. What could they ask? How could I respond?
Right.
What or who are they looking for? Who do they want to employ? What's the job exactly? What can I do? Am I the right person? Am I suitable for this position or not?
Right.
And you prepare yourself, and then you can also ask yourself, what happens if they do not take me? And maybe, well, that was quite a longer answer.
That's okay. But yeah, no, that's a good answer. And I was going to say, like, you touched on, there's two things that I think for me are helpful from Stoic philosophy about, dealing with fear. And the first one, you touched on that, and that's that the Stoics have this whole epistemological process for future threats, like you said, or just sort of things, future anxieties, right? Where you sort of have to stop and question your impressions and just use your reason to decide whether this is something you should actually be worried about, right? And then if you go through this whole process and you find out that yes, I should be concerned about this, you shouldn't be fearful no matter what, right? Because the Stoics think that, I mean, well, except for, like you said, like the heat of the moment, if someone's trying to break into your house or something, I mean, that's instinctual. There's not much you can do about that, right? But for longer term things, you shouldn't have fears, but you should have reasonable caution, right? The Stoic perspective on that is that fear is a passion, but reasonable caution is not, because
Mhm.
there's situations where we should be reasonably cautious, right? So I
Yeah,
think,
absolutely.
yeah, for me, that's really helpful way of looking at it. But so yeah, let's move on to the next question. So how can sort of Stoicism help us deal with the fear of death in particular?
Yeah. I actually, some people, I think some people say that the fear of death is the ultimate fear or the mother of all fears. It's like where fear comes from, because
Yeah,
ultimately we're just afraid of death, and then we become afraid of smaller things that
right,
might lead to death. So I would say you look at death itself. What am I afraid of really? And Stoics, they take the view, I would say, of nature, that you get born, you live
right,
for some time, and then you die. Uh, the same is true for a flower and the bird and all the
right,
animals and beings that are here. They are born, and everything that's born will die.
right,
Um, So they take this perspective that it's natural, so there's nothing wrong with it, or it's actually
Right.
good, and there's a noble death, if you can take it well, without fear, I would say. So, and what the Stoics teach is you should not be afraid of death, rather you should be afraid of not living.
Yeah.
Like they turn it around, and I kind of
Yeah.
like this, because all the time being afraid of death or of dying, you don't
Right.
really live, or being
Right.
afraid of anything, because you're
Right.
in your mind thinking about or being fearful about something that's not here yet, but all the time you forget to live.
Right.
So maybe you want to turn it around, and I believe if you live well, you will be okay
Right.
if death comes around.
Right.
So
Right.
yes, maybe you want to turn it around and say, okay, who do I want to be? And I try to be it. What do I want to do, or what do I value most? And then
Yeah.
do it, and not do it. And for the Stoics, they would say that if you actually are who you want to be, and if you live the way you want to be, and if you do the things you think are right, believe to be right, then you will be
Right.
okay when you die. That's one
Right.
thing that comes to mind. The other thing is, maybe I did not learn that from the Stoics, but there
Yeah.
are the regrets of the dying, and generally
Yeah.
we regret the things we did not do, regrets of omission rather than commission. So we don't regret the things we did so much. If we do something wrong, for example, if I treat someone badly, I will regret that.
Right.
But when I die, or before I die, I will regret it less, the things I did wrong, rather compared to the things I did not do at all. Things that something within me tells me to do this or to do that, and if I won't do it, I will later regret it. So we rather want to do the things, even if we're, for example, if we're afraid or if we're insecure about something, we still want to do it, because later we will regret the things we have not done. And
Yeah.
that's the same thing, basically. You want to live, focus on this part.
Right.
That's one thing, or two things. And for me, and I'm not sure the Stoics, they did not, I think they did not completely agree on that,
Right.
that,
Right. Right. Right.
because for
Right. Right.
me is, if you die, or if I die, the body dies. The body will be not
Right.
alive anymore. But I believe that I will still be alive, my
Right.
consciousness or the soul will still be alive. It's an
Yeah.
immortal, basically, just not in a material way. It's
Right.
energetical, or I don't know how you call it.
Yeah. Well, yeah,
Just yeah,
I would tend to agree with that. You know, it doesn't matter if everybody doesn't really agree with that, but I would tend to. But but yeah, so like you had touched on, that Stoicism really emphasizes the reality that we're all on our way to death. And that's part of nature. Marcus Aurelius says, "Do not despise death, but be well content with it, since this too is one of those things which nature wills." Right.
yeah.
So, but I mean,
And
really,
sorry,
go on. No,
what
go on.
comes to mind is, I think maybe it's Marcus Aurelius paraphrasing someone. He said something along the lines, "Today, a drop of semen, tomorrow, a pile of ashen bones," or something. So just you know, it's a part of life. It's
Yeah.
like a circle, and things repeat. That's another thing the Stoics said. There's nothing
Right.
new. People are born, and they work, and they marry, and they get children,
Right.
and they die.
Right.
Nothing
Right.
new.
Well, Yeah, but sort of like meditating. I think meditating on your own death, though, really requires sort of both courage and imagination, right? Because you need the courage to sort of confront that. A lot of people don't like to think about death at all. You know what I mean? They'd rather just, oh, that's push that away, because they think it's sort of anti-life to even think about that, right? But but if you really like, you really sort of need to imagine. I think for me, it's helpful, at least maybe not for everybody, but it's helpful to imagine sort of dying and how you might handle that. Like to think about how you might handle it now. Like Epictetus says, we must train in the winter for the summer campaign, right? Like you want to
Yeah.
think about that now before you're actually confronted with the reality of it, because it's inevitable. I mean, it's one of those things that's inevitable. So, but
Yeah, it's here for everybody, right? Whether
right,
you're, I think it's Aurelius Marcus who says that dogs not death knocks at
right,
the king's palace and
right,
also at the the poor
right,
people
right. Yeah, the
living.
beggar's hovel or
Yeah,
whatever.
so
Yeah,
yeah, it's here for everybody, and
right.
but I get it. Maybe for me, it's because I've thought a lot about it, and because I see it the way I see it. That I'm not really going to die. Just this body is going to die. So this is helpful as well. I'll still be
Right.
around, and if I lose someone, it hurts. It sucks because maybe uh, it's a good friend, right? So I've lost a couple of friends already, and I would like to spend more time with them and laugh with them again, and do something with them. So it's sad. It's really sad
Yeah,
to lose someone you love, but also I know that they're still around. Not physically, but their soul, and I will
right.
meet them again, and also I can talk to them. They will listen, and yeah, I guess they. I hope, or I don't know whether they will hear me or not, but there's a part of me that knows it's okay, and it's part of their life experience, and it was necessary
Yeah,
to happen,
right,
even if it's too early, you could say, but maybe for their soul it was an experience they had to go
right,
through, and who knows? So I'm here again with the maybe, it,
right.
I get it if you say it's terrible and if it's really sad because it is sad, but maybe it's not
Yeah,
terrible because you don't really know, how life is going to look like after death. Yeah. So
right.
maybe you will realize that, actually it's okay.
Yeah,
It's like waking up and I'm here again. I can meet old friends and
we can hope.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and okay, so before you touched on like, okay, what if something crazy happens, someone breaks into my house or whatever, but that's pretty unlikely to happen, depending on where you live. So do
Yeah.
you think that like our sort of low risk kind of modern environment has really led to us sort of having a false sense of security so that like we can't handle new risks, in society or in our lives?
Um, I I guess
Yeah,
um we I would say it has to do with challenges, like
yeah,
seeing something
yeah,
as a challenge, like a positive challenge. It's not easy. It's
right,
quite hard to actually go through this, but I'm
right,
gonna learn a lot. I'm gonna grow through this challenge, as opposed to see it as a problem, and problems suck.
right, right,
So
right.
I maybe yeah, we don't get enough challenges, or we are. They talk about in psychology. They talk about you know, parents, how do you call them? Helicopter parents,
Yeah,
job parents,
yeah,
who are, caring too much actually about their kids, so they don't get challenged almost at all, and they cannot really do what they want to do because parents are afraid they're gonna
yeah,
hurt themselves. So I think there's a actually
yeah.
quite some science behind it that yes, we are not
Yeah.
allowing ourselves, to be challenged enough. And
Yeah.
then maybe we are just living in our small world and where we know things,
Right.
but we are not used to be really challenged outside
Right.
of this bubble, and then we don't know what to
Right.
do.
Yeah.
I believe
Yeah.
it's true. Yes.
Yeah. And I thought about this question and I kind of struggled with it too, because I mean, on one hand, I get it why people feel this way, because like you said, it's like we're here. We really don't know where we came from before we got here. We're here for quite a short time, and we're surrounded by this great mystery, that's of like reality. And then we really don't know for sure what happens after we leave either.
Yeah.
So I understand why people like what we really want is sort of security and permanence, but we can't have that. It's like, and this is it's not just philosophical for me. There'll be times when I just, my heart just aches for just, permanence and security, but my reason will tell me I just can't have that. None of us can, at least not totally, and not here, not in this mortal coil. We can't. So it's nice to sort of have that sort of existential yearning sort of sated by reason, that you can't have that. And that's why if we really want to have something to hold on to, it should be virtue, right? Because virtue, first off, it not only comes from within, which is, and it's under your control to some extent, but it's not dependent on these external conditions that you can never fully control.
Yeah. So I mean, this security,
Right.
I get it, because parts
Right.
of me want to know what's going to happen, next, what's going to happen in the future. So something
Right.
is yearning, for security. Although I know it's an illusion. It is, you
Right.
won't get the security. And you're right, with the virtue. And what comes to mind are the Stoics, who were exiled, like many
Right.
philosophers in the Roman, or during the Roman Empire.
Right.
So, and they would say, it's fine. They take everything, put me on an island, and I still have peace of mind, because that's something they cannot take away. I can still
Right.
live. I can take responsibility for myself, and I'm here now. They've taken everything, and that's fine. And I think maybe we can get to this attitude as well, and to actually put it into practice. When
Right.
we practice little by little, get not too attached to stuff, for example, material things, and also
Right.
being aware that even where we live, you can maybe you will have to get away, or maybe you can look at exile as something beyond your control. So maybe it's not
Yeah.
that you get sent into exile, because it doesn't happen at the moment, right? But it's not here. Maybe, yeah,
Right.
maybe it will happen again.
Right.
Maybe sent to quarantine camp or something.
Yeah.
So, but you will,
Yeah.
if you have certain attitudes, you will, I will be able to deal with whatever is coming or whatever comes. This gives
Right.
you an inner security that's something else. This inner security, I guess it's possible that something that you can acquire over, a lifetime or less, and
Yeah.
you have it, this peace of mind, and I will be okay, whatever happens.
Yeah. And what do you think that the practice of sort of memento mori, or that remembering that we must die, can help with this?
Probably, because if you have this acceptance that
Right.
I'm gonna be here for as long as nature wants me to be here, um, and it's beyond my control.
Yeah.
If you have this acceptance, this inner acceptance, then this will help you with this inner
Right.
security, yeah, this inner citadel. I think Pierre Atto calls it the inner citadel. Yes.
Yeah. Right. And it's helpful for me though to just, to be mindful of time, to do memento mori, to be sort of mindful of time, because you just never know when it could run out. So you only have a certain amount of time to sort of improve or to get better or to try to flourish, because you just never know when your time will be up.
Yes, you focus on the living part.
Right.
I'm here to live and to flourish, actually. So
Yeah.
I like to look
That
at
would be nice.
nature. Yes, and I like to look at a flower, for example. They will do their thing, even if conditions are not perfect. Conditions are never perfect, and
Right.
throughout nature, you actually see flowers, flowering in places that look,
Yeah.
far from perfect, between rocks, and there's a beautiful flower coming out. So they don't wait for perfect conditions. They just try to flower and flourish wherever they come to be, and during the time they come. Like
Yeah. Yeah. I like
I
that. That's a good
yeah.
metaphor.
Also with insects or butterflies. Last days, I think 2 days ago, it was really sunny and
Yeah.
a nice spring day, so there was quite some butterflies. And I thought, what if, during night it's gonna get cold again? It's below
Yeah.
freezing point, maybe. I'm not sure they can live, under these conditions, but they come out because it's a nice warm spring day, and something within them tells them to wake
Right.
up, be a butterfly or whatever, and then they will enjoy the day. And I don't know if they are able to live, because now it was snowing again. So I don't know what happens to them, but I pretty sure they won't worry too much about the next day, and they will just live their butterfly life and try to flourish, as
Yeah.
good as they can do it, because there's not many flowers they can feed on, but I don't know, they can fly around and be happy.
Yeah. No, that's good. I like that response. But yeah, you mentioned quarantine camp. So let's talk a little bit about what a Stoic response to the COVID pandemic might look like. What do you think?
Could take many forms, I would say.
Yeah.
So, um, first of all, you take this core principle that something is under your control and something's not, and you focus on the things you can control. And I did that as well. But at a certain point, you need to look for information.
Right.
What's the situation really like? And that's where, for me, was like, because you want to know, is this right or not? If I do something, it does not feel right, to wear a mask, for example. I don't think it helps. So you do your research, and I would say, as a Stoic, I try to make my own decision about what's right and what's wrong because of my
Right.
perspective. I try to look at it the neutral way as much as possible and try to get the information I need to make my
Right.
own choice. Is
Right.
it does a mask help or not? And i- if I find no, it does not help, I will try to find a way without wearing mask because it feels wrong to wear a mask
Right.
if I believe it doesn't help against
Right. Right.
viruses.
Right.
So I would
Well,
say
yeah. Yeah. Right.
I would
I was just
say
going to say, sorry. Yeah, well, I was just going to say a little bit later, I was going to touch on this, that if it really doesn't help, then it would be irrational to do that. You know what I mean? So depending on whether that's actually true, wearing it, even if you really don't think it helps, is actually kind of irrational. You probably want to avoid that. So
yeah.
mm,
So I would say you try to get informed so you can make your own decision what's right for you. And I know it's not easy because I can read a text or some study and someone
Right,
else can read the same text
right, right,
and
right,
I'm like, ah, so okay, I'm not
right,
gonna wear a mask. And the other person's gonna say, no, that's not true. So I don't know. You you must decide for yourself and be open, to change and be open to the idea that maybe not everything is right that's written somewhere. An
right,
expert says this, there's also an expert that says the opposite. And what I learned is that from my father actually, he came to me someday and he told me, half of the YouTube channels, I've been watching are now deleted.
right.
They have been
Yeah,
censored basically. So because they were, not with the YouTube guidelines.
yeah,
But
yeah,
he's been watching these guys or following them for quite some time, for years, and they've just been talking
right,
about what's going on and rather neutrally, and now they've been deleted or their videos have been
right,
deleted. So I learned that censoring is actually going on. So
right,
maybe I might need to get informed, from different sources because yeah, if
right,
stuff gets censored, um, I might only get one side of the whole view, and I
right,
would like to get almost
right.
everything so I can make my own decision.
Right. And the craziest thing about that, though, is that a lot of them were censored for things that now they wouldn't be censored for. Because now, to be charitable, let's just say the science has changed. But, what was something that was wrong think 6 months ago is not wrong think necessarily anymore. But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. One of the things, like when you said before, like, you need to focus on what you can control, the whole issue of control during COVID, at least in terms of controlling the virus, I think is kind of futile almost, because it's like it's fundamentally, right, it's a highly contagious respiratory virus. I mean, even if we take precautions, I don't, and even if the government try, even like, it doesn't really matter what the government tells you to do or what you might do as a precaution, you could still get it. So it's like this issue of controlling, oh, I might have some control or whatever, and people cling to that, but it's kind of slippery because I don't really know that we necessarily do. I mean, you could do everything that you've been told to do and still end up having that happen, but I don't know.
Yeah.
As far as for me, there's the silver lining to the pandemic, has been that it's really made me confront and become more comfortable with death, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute because, like we got COVID really early in the pandemic, and that whole sort of experience really made me think a lot more about this than I otherwise would have. But
Mhm.
but yeah, like so my feeling is that a lot of the pandemic response kind of revolves around sort of this feeling of fear overcoming reason. There's been just a lot of that, and I can kind of understand it, psychologically, like why that might be the case. But now, like I said, I had COVID. We got it early in the pandemic, and so I'm not going to say that I don't understand that this can be a serious disease for a subset of the population. You know what I mean? Because it was rough. It was a tough thing to go through, But and of course, that was earlier. Some, I guess, of what's ever circulating now can be a lot milder than what I got and what my family got. So, but I'm not trying to minimize that. But I'm not trying to be insensitive to it. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that I'm going to go around and either, do irrational things, first of all, or I'm not going to go around and, hate and discriminate against people, for whatever reason. Because it just, just because there's new disease doesn't mean that, and because I've had the disease and I know it really wasn't so great, that doesn't mean that I'm going to go then do irrational or discriminatory stuff.
Yeah.
So I don't know, would you sort of agree about like some kind of the irrationality of a lot of the pandemic response, first of all? And second of all, do you think that that is kind of rooted in sort of people's like their issues around their own mortality, what's revolving around sort of their own fear of death and things like that?
But I think what's missing is an open discussion.
Response to it is by and large kind of, it has been quite irrational. You know what I mean? Like, for example,
Maybe it depends on the
yeah,
perspective, whether
right,
something is rational or not. Maybe it depends on the goal. If the
yeah,
goal is, to maybe the goal is a different goal than we're told it is, and maybe from another perspective, what they've been doing or the mandates are rational. Maybe they make sense from
yeah,
another perspective. I agree. From our
right,
perspective or from my perspective, if it's about health and
right,
if it's about health of older people or of people in general,
right.
I don't think these were rational mandates at all.
No,
It
no,
was not good for
yeah,
financial health and probably not good for our psychological
right,
health and not
right,
even the physical health because we had
right,
to stay at home and not go
right.
outside and stuff. So I
Oh,
think, yes,
absolutely,
this is
absolutely, yeah,
irrational, but from another perspective, you know, maybe it makes
right,
sense. If the goal is different than what we're told,
yeah,
maybe it's a
right.
clever mandate.
Right. Well, yeah, I'll agree with you on that because it's like the state has different motivations for why it does things than individuals. So when I'm saying that it's rooted in people's fear of death, I'm speaking more about the individual who supports these types of things, right? So you have, for example,
Okay.
like the state has different motivations, usually, almost always. I'll give you that for sure. And I don't want to speculate necessarily about what that is because that's another discussion, but yeah, just in terms of something like mandates and vaccine passports, just how irrational that is because you have, at least in the US, as far back as July 30th of last year, the CDC issued this report saying, okay, we know it doesn't stop transmission. The vaccine doesn't stop transmission. We just had 70% of these people in Massachusetts who got COVID during an outbreak were vaccinated, and then they came out with this whole booster narrative. But then with Omicron, it's been increasingly clear that this vaccine doesn't stop you getting COVID. It doesn't stop you spreading it to others, at least
Mm.
maybe in the extreme short term. Maybe, I mean, to be charitable, you could say for the first 3 months, maybe it stops you. But either way, right? Like it's it's irrational then to double down on mandates and vaccine passports when you have a non-sterilizing vaccine, something that's not going to stop people getting COVID or spreading it. You could say, okay, here I am. I'm going to show my papers to go into this restaurant now. Everybody in here is vaccinated. And you could end up getting COVID. In fact, you're just as likely to go in there and get COVID as you are in any other place because the vaccine doesn't seem to stop it. So, and that's irrational. Think about that. And it has to do more with this psychological need to feel safe and to actually be safe. You know what I mean? And that, I personally, for the people who are supporting this, that is rooted sort of in this deep-seated issues they have with their own mortality and not wanting to confront that, which is why they'll support these irrational things. And that there's actually support for this in Stoic literature. Epictetus says that basically the fear of death can make us do, irrational things where we disgrace ourselves, right? Just like, doing, hating other people who don't want, mandates or passports, or who aren't vaccinated, and that's basically a result of the fear of death. So I don't know, that's my take on it. But
Mhm. Well, yeah, with the passports,
right,
from the perspective of health, doesn't make sense because either you have a vaccine that works,
right,
and then you don't
right,
need a passport, and if it doesn't work, you don't need a passport either. So
right,
you,
right,
I get it, but I look at it from a different perspective. Um, their goal is it's a different one, I would say, and
right,
you know, I I just I still try to focus on myself because let's say uh, I could, you and me, we could be completely wrong about this, or
right,
I'm open,
right,
I could be
right,
wrong, but
right,
I could also be partly right about, what's going on. Who
right.
knows? I don't know. and I'm not going to judge other people
Right.
because they have.
Right.
That's
Right.
what I mean. You and me, we read the same text, and you're gonna have a different,
Right.
understanding of what's written there, or
Right.
you're not gonna believe it, or I believe it, and think I'm naive.
But no, you're right. I'm just joking.
Yeah. Yeah, I try to focus on myself, but I believe, I cannot change another person's view.
Right.
It
Yeah.
might happen, it might not happen, but I don't try to change someone's view. I I'm happy to have a discussion, but I'm also happy not to have a discussion. I,
Right.
for me, it's
Right.
fine, and I don't try to change anyone's view. I don't even
Right.
think, or I'm not sure that's possible.
Right.
I think it's like pulling. If you want to have a flower grow faster and you pull it, you will destroy it. It doesn't work. And I
Yeah.
think maybe it's the same. You cannot. If they are interested in your opinion, I'm happy to share it,
Right.
and I'm sure you're happy to share it. But if they have a different opinion, and that's fine. We,
Right.
it's just I we mostly we see with the eyes, or a lot we see with the eyes. And if I sit here and someone sits next to me, the perspective is slightly different. And
Right.
even if I try to get their perspective, I won't see exactly the same. And it's not only true with stuff we can visually see. It's also true with stuff how we
Yeah.
perceive what's going on in the world. I'm not sure, and that's something that puzzled me many times. That why do people now with this COVID story see it so completely different? You
Right.
know, very smart people see it this way, smart people see it that way.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
and
Right. Yeah. Well, you're always going to have reasonable people have some degree of disagreement on things. But like you said, that's exactly why there needs to be more of a dialogue, an open dialogue, and that there hasn't been. And that you're right. It's extremely problematic, that just that part of it alone. But yeah, so let's end it on a more positive note. I mean, this is okay. This is kind of an uncertain period of history that we're living through, which maybe just got more uncertain. I don't know, but I mean, so why? I think we probably need to cultivate courage, during this time, honestly. And what can we do? What can we do to be more courageous?
yeah, um, get clear on what you value. I'd say if you know what you value and you want to live by what you value, or your priorities, or what's truly
Yeah.
important to you, then you will probably also do it. But if we
Yeah.
kind of are swimming in the ocean or floating in the ocean and don't know where we want to go,
Right.
we will go anywhere. And the
Right.
same happens maybe with our actions. I'm not sure that if I'm just following along, and it's, for me it's okay, you can do that.
Right.
But
Right.
I would say, if you ask how can you be more courageous, know your values, know what's truly important to yourself, and then you will also want to express that, to act on your values, and you will probably automatically find more courage, because
Right.
you will know, that's something I want to stand for. So
Right.
I'm here, and I say no, for example, or I say
Right.
uh, I will do this or I will do that because that's what I believe to be right, and the other thing I
Yeah.
believe to be wrong. But if we don't know where we stand, well, we can go either way, and doesn't take any courage,
Right.
because
Yeah.
you don't know where you want to go or who you want to be. So that's one way to cultivate courage, because you know who you want to be
Yeah.
or what your values are, so you can,
Yeah.
be that person, live by those values.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's great. I don't have anything to say that can top that. So Yeah, thank you. That's a really nice, that's a good way to put it, and probably a good note to end on. So, yeah, well, thank you so much for coming on. This has been really good, and it was nice to see you again.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Jonas, for taking the time. Thanks again.